Good evening, this is the Village of North Bennington, and this is the Board of Trustees meeting. It's Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. We're at the Village Depot offices at 7:02 p.m. And the first item of business tonight is reviewing the monthly warrants and approving payment of the bills. Okay. Let's start with the minutes. It's from January 7th. Yeah, just that was justified to the left. Did it all have a chance to read minutes? Is there any corrections?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. And so that motion carries. The monthly warrant and payment of the bills.
So we have so there are actually two. This and then there's an update with these. So that's the warrant plus these were late additions.
So what's the proper total? Well, that's separate.
Yeah, so these were additions, these were additions.
Yeah, let's just sign these separately. So
Just this side.
the first warrant that was prepared.
These were additions. So these were additions as of January.
Those were late ones, yes. Lori had gotten them kind of like the day that we met, but they didn't get in, so those were January. So they were sent out, but you never got a chance to approve them.
So
Because
these
they
need to
were
be
late.
approved, but they've already been paid.
They've already been paid,
Yeah.
they're just late. So
Okay,
they
so
need
let's
to
do
be
this one first.
approved and
So those payments that have already been made in the amount of $5,279.51 for salt is the main one. $855 to Peckham. Do you know what that one was?
It's gravel, probably
Gravel.
archery. I mean, we've been going through that.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy, so.
Ours.
I'll make a motion to accept the additional warrant of January 12th, 2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. There's none opposed. The second warrant is the regular warrant for today's meeting, the monthly expenses from last meeting to this meeting. That's in the amount of $132,761.29, including a truck payment in the amount of $16,235. Or sorry, no, the backhoe payment in the amount of $16,235, and the truck payment in the amount of $78,320. The whacker payment and our grade school assessment and other usual expenses, property, salt, and power, et cetera, et cetera.
The express copy is the town annual report.
If I can just pass that around if anybody has any questions.
I'll make a motion to accept the warrant February.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that warrant? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. The third warrant that we have is our payroll warrant. That is in the amount of $9,309.40.
I will make a motion to the payroll warrant.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? None. All those in favor of approving the payroll warrant for February, the amount of $9,309.40 indicate by saying aye. Aye. You did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is there any citizen comment tonight? We can move on to that section, and we don't have a time limit on our discussion, but, you know, so please feel free to share your thoughts as you will.
Okay, I'm Jane Sobel, and I'm here for the McWaters Park Permaculture Gardens. And I'm just following up on a memo that Cinda sent to Mark Boudreau with some suggestions on mowing recommendations. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to see this or not.
No, I was gonna bring them up at later in the meeting, but now it's fine.
Good.
Thank you.
So I'm here if there are any questions that I can answer, which I may or may not be able to, although I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I believe right now that we haven't really, and I think it's just to send them when we're down there. We're early on in the discussions on what we're actually gonna do down there in terms of mowing. So we don't have any set plans as of yet. So what I assume we're going to do is obviously give everyone a chance to look at them and kind of take into consideration on how we move about,
Fine.
how we change these down there. But I did mention to Sarah that even in our early discussions, we certainly brought up your group and all you've done down there. And certainly invited you to kind of have input before we make any decisions. So it's good to have these in writing to see what would meet your needs. And we may find that we were planning on doing even more than your needs, are mentioned. So,
Okay.
but we appreciate you putting those down.
Okay, so I think that what triggered the discussion here was that there was a suggestion that the way that the grass has been maintained there was both difficult for our equipment because it's just a large area that's pretty bumpy, and but also that it grows so fast that it has to be done a lot. And so we had looked into an option to use a growth inhibitor, but that option was rejected by the board. And so a different option was looked at to allow the grass to grow more or to grow to a longer length, but that wasn't fully developed. It was just sort of a theoretical plan. And then so, as we should, we had discussions informally first, and then I think it's wonderful that we have minutes from a meeting of your group, because that can be presented to our board, and then we can take action on
Sure.
minutes that are actually recorded. So this is a perfect way for this to happen, and I think these recommendations seem definitely like things that the board could consider. But just to make sure that we're clear, because you are here, maybe we can go through them and make sure that we understand what the minutes mean. So what I'm getting from this is that the path that goes around, like we would envision a path from the parking area out to the permaculture garden and sort of the circumference of the park, more of a path maintenance as opposed to the entire area being mowed. And that path would be from 3 to 3.5 inches, or
In
4 to 6.
consultation with Norm.
Right. I think what they're basically saying is that one, they could do any mowing less often.
Yeah.
Two, the mowing they do focuses on paths that lead to the pertinent
The
elements as well as
the beds
around,
and
the beds and the signs. And I would actually recommend that the remainder of the area could not be mowed even less frequently
then here.
than 3 to 4 weeks. I mean,
The concern one of the concerns that we were talking about was about ticks, that if you let it grow too tall, you're making a breeding ground. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of balancing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would want to see that.
I think the other trick there might be too, the longer the grass gets, that seems to be a popular place for dogs to roam. Makes it a little harder for finding those things that dogs tend to leave behind. Or are we now making it more difficult for them? Just a thought.
Yeah, I think those are all thoughts. I think we're just gonna have to kind of
Balance
dip
it
our
out.
toe into this and do something this spring and approach it. You know, my opinion about ticks is they're everywhere, and if you're out in anywhere, you're gonna get ticks. So dress appropriately and do whatever you do to avoid them. But I think if you want to get a meadow effect, that is an impact, a positive impact on the insects and the other things that benefit from taller grass, mowing it after it's 6 inches tall is really no different than mowing it all the time. And then you want some of that really to become more mature growth, structure, cover, all the things that benefit the wildlife down there.
I think there's an equipment issue too, I think, because if I'm not mistaken, once you get past a certain length, then you can't use your regular mower, you'd have to use a brush hog, and that isn't as effective to mow something to like a 6-inch length. It's more like if it's,
We don't have, that's.
Do you have the flail anymore? You don't have the flail mower? You just have the one that's on the.
Yeah,
But you don't have-
that's
Yeah,
why,
yeah, no, I know.
that's that, you
For a
can't
while-
do that.
For a while you didn't you have a 3-point hitch one that from somewhere?
Not a flail.
Okay. It might be worth actually exploring someone doing, once or twice a year, those non-mowed areas who has a 6-foot plus flail mower that, or a brush hog or any of that, to just come in and knock all that down. Explore what that might cost, who might be able to do that. Meanwhile, our highway and parks crew is maintaining a much smaller square footage of groomed and very walkable paths and trails. That's my vision, but I think I will have to.
Was there any actual discussion on, as I think what your minutes indicate is a 5 to 6 inch length. Was that specifically discussed versus like a longer length or a meadow effect, as he's saying?
I'm probably not the best person to answer these questions,
Okay.
but this is what I think. I think one of the reasons for cutting it at that length that frequently was also to keep certain kinds of plants from growing more. I mean, you may want a meadow effect, but part of what you've been able to do for us is to knock down, the holy terrors that grow on the bank, which if you don't mow in the middle on a regular basis, then they'll start taking over again. I mean, I think it's a balance
It is.
again.
In fact, what's happening on that bank is because that's a disturbed soil, and that's where you're gonna get those invasive agricultural nasties. In an established meadow, that actually is better at resisting
That kind of
that kind
stuff.
of thing. But you're right, it's not binary, and one might want to actually introduce in time some desirable
Plantings,
broadleaf forbs that you would want in those areas that will also suppress the opportunists that you see right along the roadside. That's what's,
Right.
in fact, going in there and laying the mulch down there or pouring, that's just opening that up as a new palette for all that stuff to grow. That's where you get the burdocks and all kinds of stuff that you get. Parsnips. I'm trying to think what else is.
Well, that's what we've been trying to
Yeah.
keep from growing. I think I want to get Avery Wood here.
No, and I think we all should, find an opportunity again to meet down there as spring comes on.
Good,
Take a look at it.
good. All right.
And it's gonna be kind of a learning year anyway with this. Seeing how fast things are growing, how often you're gonna wanna be down there. You're gonna be able to tell just by eyeing it, driving by it, to say, given our equipment, it looks like it's at the point where we have to.
We're there once a week, and sometimes that's not enough. When we mow, the mowers that we have, are finished mowers for parks, and they can't mow at 6-inch heights. I think we should explore our other vendor that does the other big field and see if he'll shoot us a price. Maybe we can live with it. My biggest pet peeve is it doesn't look nice like the rest of the village because it grows so fast and you end up with all that grass. Now we're gonna mow at 6, it's gonna be more, and it's just gonna be a pain. We don't have a.
So are you like recommending, possibly that he take over and maintain it as he maintains the other, or?
No, you have to mow it once a week.
That's what I mean, or price out him coming with equipment we don't have to do it on a less.
He's got the same equipment, but he's got more time.
Yeah, well, no, I was just asking which one you were
Yes.
saying.
I would
Him to maintain it as he maintains the other.
I would entertain a conversation with him to say, what do you think? I want this mowed once a week. Like the other field, we can go 10 days, we can go 12, 14.
Well, that's prime.
Because it doesn't grow, even though it is next to a water source. But that one, maybe from its future life, had some fertilizer and some stuff. It's got a water source right there that, goes into it. It's got water, when it rains, it comes down the hill, goes into the pipes. I mean, it's always wet in there. And it grows, and it grows fast, and then you get the thatch, and then we all mowed that in our own houses. And now it makes it harder, and then the next, it's worse,
Well, I think, I've got to say that in my opinion, we're approaching this not just as a reducing the nuisance on the highway, but the other benefits that we can gain from a not mowing regime. So I'm still in support, I'm not in support of just finding out who else we can pay to mow every week.
Given the
Part
amount,
of it, a third of it, I think, still needs to be mowed, just for access for people and to throw a frisbee around or do whatever.
well, that's the other thing, that's one of the conversations I had with Sim down there. We've kind of got areas that
Right.
can still be done. We've got that whole field over on the backside of the lake. So the original thought, I mean, obviously the original plan we had when we first started talking about it was that that would be going on down there. It just isn't realistic. Most of the people that use that park are for dogs, or for the fishing, or for the planting. So I mean, I've come kind of full circle on. I don't think it needs to be.
Does it need to be
I don't think it needs to be a
designated?
playable
That
field
makes sense.
for things because you're a mile and a half away from another spot. that you
And
go.
I also think
I
that
agree.
it's an aesthetic, it's a shift in the aesthetic where you're not, the ideal is not a manicured lawn. It actually is something that looks more wild and meadow-like, except for these trails that gain access to the educational elements. And I mean, in my eyes, the better aesthetic is something that is not maintained and is maybe bush hogged once a year by, aside from the trails, by someone, by a contractor, you know what I'm saying? It just lays it down. That's better bird habitat, it's better insect habitat, it's better moisture retention and
Well,
you know,
the water department has a tractor and brush hog, right? So maybe we can figure out how to utilize other.
So we could, and I think the only place that would really need to be maintained on a regular basis, if you were that, the section of
The
trees.
picnic area.
The picnic area, basically where that little drive down to the field, if you did like a 10-yard all around that tree area, just up to the parking, which would be a lot less work, obviously, and that whole field, I totally changed my thoughts on that. I don't think it needs to be managed.
So,
The college has.
Yeah, yep.
like what they've done actually below Jennings Hall is exactly what I envisioned.
Pathways of what now?
So I think that there's at least a vocal minority on the board, if not a majority, that's in favor of something akin to what's on Bennington College property where there are paths with long grass, but I don't think we're in a position to make a decision about that right now. I think we'd like to discuss that further with the permaculture garden, because that, I don't think we want to, if your organization feels very strongly against that sort of design, then I think we might continue to discuss. But if you understand that it may be longer and you think about the positives and negatives of that and decide you're either in favor or okay or not against that, then I think we may move forward in that direction. But we won't do that without
Okay,
further discussion.
so let me make sure I understand
Yes,
this well
please.
enough. Looking towards more of a meadow look, similar to the one of the lawn in front of Jennings.
The pasture down
But the
below.
paths are somewhat are as described here,
Yes.
and bushwhacking once a year,
As needed, let's say,
or as needed.
once a year is not gonna cut it there.
Yeah,
We're gonna
it
go-
might cut it, no pun intended.
That grows too fast.
None taken.
But, yes.
Okay, so I'll report back. Thank you for thinking about this with us, and thank you for your support for the gardens.
You guys do.
Nor really.
It looks nice down there. It's a lot of work. You put a lot of work in it, the village has put a lot of work in it, the school has put a lot of work in it. I think these decisions won't come easily because nobody wants to go backwards in this.
Well, this doesn't feel like it's backwards at all.
That's just a shift.
And we're not laying cement, so you can
No.
try it and see.
That's right, you can always go back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further citizen comments tonight? Would Mrs. Hunter like to speak to the issue of the pending legislation on tree wardens?
Oh,
She wasn't ready for that.
I'm unprepared
She
to
thought
comment.
there might be
Only kidding.
a
Yeah.
Is it not gonna?
They
Yes,
apparently-
well, this is, the public hearing is actually, if you have you may want to stay for a couple minutes.
You may not.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip down to our new business because it is now 7:27 and we do not have a representative from Verizon Wireless here. But this meeting is a noticed public hearing for a mobile communication tower that's been proposed for Mechanic Street. So at the town property at 56 Mechanic Street, the town garage, there was a site proposed by a wireless communication. It's a contractor that's working with Verizon, so it would be Verizon, would be the one that owned the tower, I guess. But they've made a proposal to put a tower there and lease the spot that they're using, which wouldn't interfere with our services at, our operation from the garage. Obviously, it interferes with aesthetics, so we want to make sure that we gave our two public hearing notices before we made a decision as a board on whether to allow the lease. So we were hoping to have a more, a better picture to see here tonight. They've given us a sketch, essentially. It's an engineer's sketch, but it's not a 3D model like there's, I think they're planning to provide to us based on a balloon float that they've done there. So they floated a balloon at the height that they think that this tower is going to be, which is, do you remember
I thought the original was 70 and then they adjusted that to 90, I believe.
So I think they floated it at 90 feet.
I believe they actually did.
We actually-
float it at 90. They
I
floated
thought it
it-
was 50 and 70.
No.
Okay, well, they floated a balloon
It was
at
gonna be higher.
somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 feet, and give or take. And based on that float, they were gonna create images of how this would look. And that's what we were hoping to see tonight, but we don't have the so I don't,
And
you
do I
know,
remember them saying that they were gonna actually come and do another?
yeah,
And leave it up there
right.
for a few
Yeah,
days,
they were gonna
right?
do another.
So-
At the actual.
Yes.
I don't know whether
I'm
that
not-
and I haven't had communication, so maybe that means the interest has waned a little bit, but the board is certainly not gonna be making any decision on this unless we actually have our presentations at publicly warned meetings. So I would suggest to the board that we should not really count this as one of the public meetings, so we don't really have any information to give people.
No, we should postpone or reschedule the hearing for next month, and we'll either find out that they lost interest.
Well, we already have next month's regular meeting warned as this as well.
But it'll
So
be
we'll
number
keep
one
that,
instead of
but
two.
that's gonna be number one, and then if they decide to follow through, then we'll make April our number two. So,
Now regardless
But-
of that, we can still.
yeah,
take
let's
comments, right?
have some,
While we're here,
yes.
are there any other cell towers in North Bennington?
There are not. There is one, that we had received another proposal from, another
Company.
company that was proposing a much shorter installation that would go on top of a telephone pole, and I think they have been in discussions with doing that in back of Pollins at that little parking area that's owned by the Sage City Syndicate. But that,
We haven't
to our mind, that would be much less intrusive.
Intrusive.
And it's also now, that site that was identified is now private property, so we don't really have
It's not up to us.
authority.
Right.
It's different technologies.
Right.
Whatever the other one is using, I think, is more of the G5, smaller but more networked towers. This is more conventional tower, like the one that's in downtown Bennington, police station, or
The BCIC, or the.
South Street, somewhere right there by the, right,
It's right behind the stone, that stone building.
The old police station.
the old police station.
Would it, so that, would this one look like that one? I mean, do we at least have some examples of what it might look like? I understand it would be nice to know the
I
height.
think this is more of a monopole, so it's not, it would be, it would be a little higher.
There is a
than
picture
that.
here of
Yeah.
what they proposed as kind of a generalized
But it
rendering.
has like an array on the top.
There's an array on the top. It would be green or brown. It would blend with whatever, you really, all of it would be painted, so it would be,
Am I wrong in thinking if you go up New 7, you get to East Dorset, there's those two windmills right there? The pole part, I think, is similar in design to those, isn't it? You know what I'm talking about?
By where they
South of Danby.
built that UPS transfer facility and then they never used like over
It's
there.
actually, it's just before you go over the railroad tracks by the East Dorset sewer.
Yeah.
oh, that's on the septic guys.
Yeah.
Where their door,
Yeah.
where there's a window.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd have to look at that again. I know what
I think that's a monopole design where it's, the metal is just fabricated in such a way now that it can be, it's just.
it's not it's not a tripod or a quad, this kind of thing. It's really just almost like a miniature, but what you'd see on the base of a miniature windmill, which is a.
Which honestly, for where they're putting it, doesn't really matter, because the part that's gonna be obtrusive is the stuff that's over the tree line.
Right.
Because there's basically nowhere you're not gonna see really anything except for the last, whatever, 20, 30 feet
Not
possibly,
even.
over the treetops, so that,
Actually, the balloon float we didn't really put it even above that array of pine trees.
I wanna say that it was only
But now they're saying they want
20
more.
Yeah, I
feet
think they
lower
want
than they
higher.
actually.
Well,
I wanna
that's,
say
if
that.
that's
I don't know
true,
that for a fact.
that's
Yeah, it
that's
sounds like
pretty
they're not
typical of the way they,
deciding on it.
Yeah.
They started
how they
out.
move along, so.
Okay. And your point about the other proposal near Collins, what the point you're making is it's not gonna be income for the village if it's on
It
private.
would not be, it would be, if they were to
Even though it's
negotiate
less
something, it would be
intrusive.
income for the Sage City Syndicate. I don't even know if they've had conversations.
Yeah,
I
they,
think they did.
with that company, they never came back to us again, correct?
We kind of told them, why don't you check that out, because we'd rather that than have it here on these poles on Main Street.
They were looking at 2 locations, and it ended up that the locations that they thought were most optimal were on Bennington College property and this property. So we then became not really part of the conversation, other than they needed to get somebody's email address.
Okay, so that's just, that could happen, we just want to.
Won't know about it.
Well, they'll have to pull a permit for it, though.
Well, I think
Yeah,
they
okay.
still have to comply with our zoning, but
Right, so
as
that,
long as they are in
Not
compliance.
on the campus, I don't know.
The campus would have a lot more freedom with the camp, but
I don't think it was gonna happen.
that's right, college
Oh,
Said no.
declined to entertain the idea. For now, anyway, I don't know. And that's kind of when they came over to us. And my issue is that if they were providing enhanced cell service for all people who live in the village, I would be more enthused about the idea. As it stands, most people don't have Verizon here. And as I understood it, they were going to be pointing that tower predominantly into Hoosick and White Creek area. And so then I'm not sure what it's doing for us, other than what I consider kind of nominal income stream that would be welcome, again, if the community didn't have a problem with it. But when you ask, is it going to help AT&T customers who have no coverage on the backside of Bigham Hill? village?
Kind of down into the.
And the answer was, well, no. That would be, those carriers could then approach them.
Right, so there's potential for that, but it would be, so
And
they would have to rent space on that pole to their equipment, and obviously if they do that, it would add to whatever's there.
And they'd be given substandard real estate. They'd be given, you know,
Right, the less, yeah.
the 8 feet below where they are. But that doesn't mean that that carrier wouldn't still find that interesting or beneficial. But the contracts I've been involved with on some land, I control. Once that happens, you write into clauses that you two share in that profit.
I was gonna ask that question.
So it's more.
You know, do contracts get renegotiated? Even if it's only the one company, how often does that?
Well, unfortunately, they don't want to
Potentially
entertain doing this unless it's like a 22.
Right.
We just renegotiated a 50-year contract. You know, the technology's going to be obsolete by then probably, but they don't, you know, there's built-in inflationary.
Did anybody remember what the proposal was?
That's why it'd be really handy to have somebody here from the company.
It would be.
I thought it was 5 years.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a 5-year.
That seems pretty low to me, given my butt. Do you have
For
that?
sure, the guys
Was
had.
that in
It wasn't.
No, later they sent something, it wasn't in November. Point is, you build into an existing contract that any further revenue stream that they generate, they share a portion of that with the owner of the land, just so that there's incentive. Otherwise, you could just have, you know,
Are you at liberty to say what kind of fees they would pay the town?
I don't know that we.
I don't think we can talk about the terms. of the
Because
lease.
there hasn't been one, you know, they throw numbers at you, but you really
There's
don't
nothing
know
that's-
whether you can believe it, so setting that out there probably isn't.
Yeah, the numbers that were given by their representative, it wasn't discussed
Wasn't-
beyond that, I don't think. So I think the numbers we got were kind of a basic, standard, whatever they usually start off with anybody, so.
I think that'd be something they would have been willing to share themselves as a possibility if they were here, but
Right, I understand. So this is something that wouldn't serve that many people in North Bennington?
that's my understanding. I think they were pretty forthright about that.
Yeah. But obviously, as a, you have every right to change your cell phone carrier, and if you found that it was worthwhile to change from what
Right,
you're currently doing
right.
to Verizon, because you get, I mean, that's, so it could potentially, be a selling point for a lot of businesses if they wanted to switch over.
They wouldn't be doing it if they didn't think they'd be getting something.
Sure.
A lot of business out of it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds like they've obviously done their
Research.
thinking about however many customers they have.
You know, I don't want to put words in their mouth. They just pointed, I remember them talking about what direction they wanted that thing to be pointing, which was that way.
Well, it don't make sense. It's more heavily populated that way than the other.
And I think they said that they might get a range up to 7A. Remember that part? Like it would, up to, the Apple place up there, kind of.
Shaftesbury, or Village.
No.
No,
Terry's
Terry's
Orchard.
Orchard. Apple Hill.
Thank you. Harwood Hill. So, but again, it's all speculation, and there's no point in even going further else. I think we should schedule another meeting for April and presume that we will also have one on the agenda for March.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's any further citizen comments or other business that anyone would like to raise with the board, otherwise we're just gonna basically quickly move through the treasurer's report, please.
Well, from the cash balance report that I sent along earlier, you'd be be able to see that we have sufficient cash in our account to cover all of the large bills that were on today's warrant and more. So we're good there. We did receive checks from, for the shared cost of the summer paving, fall paving projects by the Mile Around the Woods, share of a person we did some culvert work on their property, and also received the grant, the BCRC culvert money for that grant work that Norm had done earlier. The loan, the big loan that you all had approved for the water line project, the $2.5 million loan that is supposed to close next month, but that project isn't done. So the bank is rewriting that loan to end in June. So for next meeting, I will have a loan extension or loan renewal documents for you all to sign. So
Is there,
add that.
is there a cost to us to have the project delayed like that?
The cost is the additional interest on the money, but that just gets additionally rolled into the eventual bond to pay it. I don't know whether the entire amount of that, of the grant / loan has been spent or will be spent.
Right, because it's actually probably, is there any way that it's beneficial in, as far as the interest goes? Because we basically take out the loan and then pay the contractor as the work is completed.
Correct.
So if it's not paid, then we're sort of hanging on to some money for a little bit longer.
Correct. So there's been not all of it has yet been accessed from the line of credit.
Right. Okay.
And I'm not sure all of it will, because I don't know how much work is left to be done. The water department would be better able to answer that.
Which for
But-
anybody who needs
Yeah.
more information on this, that will be next week. It's
Yes.
the water department. So please have
Same
that
time.
if you want.
Next week. But, and that will make sure, well, I actually already have alerted them to, that it was supposed to be scheduled and that we wouldn't be having to push it back. And I just confirmed that with the project engineer last week, and then confirmed it with the bank and spoke with the bank officers, and they informed me that they will have everything for this board to approve, because it is this board that is, and it is the village, not the water department, that has received the grant for that. That's it.
Great. And what about can you just give us a little bit of like how you think the status of major purchases at this point? Or do you think that as far as inventory goes, we are in a good position right now, just because we did finish up with our budgeting for next year? And so I think, we just purchased a new vehicle, so as far as equipment owned and loans that we have, what's our position?
We have, well, the backhoe loan pays once a year, so that just got paid. So that was the 5-year loan, we just paid the second of the 5 years on that. The truck loan that we took, the new truck that was just purchased, the second half of which was just approved here, we have a $125,000 loan on that one. That one is also a 5-year loan. The first payment of that will be basically this time next year. I think it'll be a couple weeks earlier. That can be prepaid at any time. And that will be drawn down, the principal of that will be drawn down as surplus equipment. Its equipment is purchased from the surplus site, held, and then resold.
Right.
Great program for supplementing our tax revenue to purchase that. We have our equipment reserves have been scheduled out till 2050, all of the individual equipment reserves, and that was sent out a while ago, including the firehouse reserves, et cetera. The next, the truck, I don't know whether you call it truck 1 or truck 2, but one of those trucks will be, is scheduled to be replaced in the coming fiscal year. So it will be sometime after the summer that will be. Those are fully paid for. From now until 2050, those 2 trucks will never have to borrow a dime when we recirculate those.
Did they have separate reserves?
No, it's 1 truck reserve, there's 3 trucks within it, the two
But because of the
small
amount
ones.
of doing in the schedule that we're on, we pay for truck 2 and 3 cash essentially.
Yes, this big truck that we bought right now, I don't know what
But
it.
they have enough to the truck to cover payments on that as they come due.
Correct, and we will have to budget for those.
Right.
It will not come out of the reserve. We will budget for those, which is budgeted in the
Right.
coming budget. Further purchase in 6-7 years of that, there will probably still need to be some amount of that truck purchased, because that's the big expensive one. But if we ever had to buy another backhoe, we would probably have smaller payments than we do now because of that reserve. The only other one that we might consider at some point looking at is some mowing equipment and scheduling out exactly when we want to replace mowing equipment with what, to see how we might want to either reserve for
And
that.
it might not be, because they're lower ticket items, it might not be for the specific equipment, but
Yeah.
a general fund that's
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
like 4 or 5 different items.
yeah. But it would be nice, I personally think it would be nice to have some idea, not just, well, here's a pot of money in case we need something, but have specific items of equipment that you would want in there.
Thank you very much.
And when I worked with the fire chief and the assistant fire chief Ed and Ed, they're very helpful in scheduling out their reserves. Frankly, if they ever had to purchase not if, when a fire truck needs to be purchased, that's gonna be a different discussion, because there's no way that there's anywhere near enough in the fire truck reserve to purchase an engine. So there would be some borrowing that would need to go along with that. But as far as the other equipment that they have, I think we're on real solid ground for their smaller equipment that ages out
Great.
every 7 or 8 years.
Well,
Did that answer?
yes, no,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you so much. That's great. Any other questions for the treasurer? Thanks again. Highway report.
Well, it's been snowing, raining, snowing, raining,
That's a weather report.
be cold. It's a money report,
Yeah.
so.
Did you guys saw it this morning?
Yeah,
That's not talking about.
it got greasy really, really fast.
It did.
Those are those things that,
Right, so we're-
that, you know, they are what they are. We've got 2 loads of salt inbound right now. We were hoping we wouldn't have to buy another thing, but that's the way it is. You know, spent a lot of time with the state guys, Stu and Noah, and had a big conference call with them, and they're predicting 20 to 40 inches of snow from now until like the end of March. So that's a big window. You know, not all the same day, but, you know, their history and outlooks, and, you know, even the head weather guy said, listen, I don't really have a lot of stock in 30-day forecast, much less 60 days, but, you know, I give you 7 and it's gonna snow at the end of the week. So, it is what it is. I will tell you the investment of the underbelly plow, if anybody drove in one of our roads Friday, we'll never have another truck without one.
Yeah, that seems to be really, really
Yeah.
effective.
That was it.
Especially for the, what I would consider secondary roads, so, you know, your Mechanic Street, Madison Road, you know, College Road, that kind of area, it seems to really get things.
Well, it does, and it's just as effective on, say, Water Street, which is a primary, you know, and it's actually better there because there's more traffic, you know.
Well, right, but you have the state hitting that
No,
as well, too.
no. They pick up their plows at ChemFab and don't drop them until they get past the store. Every once in a while they forget, but no, that's all ours, 100%.
But they'll do Bennington for that.
There's arteries inside of Bennington. I mean, I can't comment on where they are. I know Main Street is one of them. That the state road, the state doesn't do it. You know, there's a certain point.
That's why we get paid the 50 grand, it's basically to maintain roads. There are state highways, but within the town, we build ones.
Right, your class two highway.
Interesting.
So I don't know if Route 9's different, you know.
I guess they're coming out to do past.
Like Route 9 over Woodford, the state does.
Right.
Route 9 in Main Street, well, from Old Bennington, you know, probably somewhere, I would guess, I think I can remember out in Camelot, when I used to plow privately. You know, Old Bennington has a certain section that they hire a vendor to maintain, contractor, and then the town of Bennington takes care of a certain spot. Again, they get the same, you know, they get the same funds, just at a different amount for the roads that they do, you know. But I can't tell you what roads they do or not, that's not.
What about the wet application?
We used that for the first time Saturday morning, early. We're still getting it dialed in right now. For lack of a better term, it almost hemorrhages chemical, which, you know, that's the way they set them up, because that's the way the vendors like to have them, because they sell more stuff. We spent the day with Patrick from the AOT garage, and we have some tools that he left, and we're going to try to get it to where we want it. But, you know, but it works. It's proven science. We got to do a little thing to get the chemical in the truck. Right now, we have a setup that's okay. It's not really the safest thing in the world, but as long as OSHA doesn't come around, we'll be fine this year.
Well, I guess we'll get right on that then. Any other issues that you see? What, do you have a submission of hours for this?
Oh, I have it at my shop. I didn't bring it.
Okay, all right. But it's been a lot, I'm assuming. Or is it similar to last year or more, you think, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
You know, the month of January last,
Yeah.
you know, we still had times, and, you know, but the month of February's got right up pretty fast,
Right.
so.
There was a little break.
heat.
Oh, yeah.
Next item that we always have is the Development Review Board. Do you have any report or anything from them?
We have not met in the past 2 months.
Right, so, okay. Planning Commission
No.
and Fire Department, Water Department, we don't have anything. So I think Verizon, old business, Verizon, payment of legal fees.
What's that?
Do we have a bill for some stuff?
No, we don't, but you asked me to put that on the agenda.
Does this regards
quite a while
our
ago.
consultation with our, about this tower stuff?
Did I email you or call you?
Yeah. You emailed me about that.
Okay. It's starting to come back to me. Oh. Okay, yes, now I remember. Sorry.
It's okay.
We just, one suggestion that we had was to have our contract with Verizon reflect that they would cover our legal fees for the transaction, which apparently is fairly standard. So I just wanted to make sure that that was sort of in the conversation so that we didn't forget about it and just go with the contract that was offered. That we did want to make sure that we were able to, this is being proposed to the village. It's on village property. It's, and so I think, it's not something that we went out and sought, this, we don't need to be doing this, it's something that we're considering. So I think for us to have the ability to consult with our village attorney, an attorney of our choosing, to make sure that we, our interests are being looked after is only fair, and that we just build that into the contract. So that was the only point that I had there. Thank you for putting that on there. I'm glad I remember what it was. Okay. And I do not have any particular item for executive session unless anyone else does.
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any opposition? I think that is unanimous consent.
I mean, no, I don't know what I was doing, sir.